We'll start with the big picture takes from the Phones For You founder, John Caudwell, who, as you can see, is John. Very good morning, John.
Good morning, Will.
What is your first sort of big picture takeaway on the budget?
I think it's a lot less damaging than it might have been. I think that all the damage was done in the last budget. I think the last budget had got many component parts that were damaging to Britain, damaging to Britain's future GDP growth and prosperity. And we've seen that with the exodus of people. We're not going to call it a mass exodus, but there's more people leaving the UK for Dubai, Milan and Monaco than there were the year before.
So quickly, what was wrong in the budget a year ago?
Oh, gosh, it was
Just quickly.
Everything nearly. You know, we'd have to go into a lot of detail on that, and we don't have time for that this morning. But it looked very business unfriendly to everybody. I mean, items like BPR being removed and all the taxes that they had imposed, and not having reliefs on entrepreneurs, relief for building a business over 20 years, say, and giving them a lower rate of corporation. I mean, it's just negative through and through.
Where's this one?
That did the damage. Now, this one is as good a budget as I think anybody could have expected, because we know they've got a black hole, we know they've got to raise money, and part of that is because they're not getting the GDP growth. So, given that they've got to raise the money, I think there's a reasonable degree of fairness in what they've done. But there are some component parts of the budget that I find very peculiar. For instance, this increase in universal credits for people with children. Now, I understand on the one hand about taking kids out of the poverty trap, and I absolutely agree with that, but it has to be managed in such a way that it doesn't encourage people to be out of work and sitting there with a house full of kids and actually not looking for work. So if the mechanisms are such that it controls that and encourages people back to work and gets people into work, and they need universal credits then to top up their income from the job, that's fine. But the devil's in this detail of how it's going to work, and it has to encourage people to be in work and encourage them very strongly.
So let's touch then on the welfare budget more broadly, because obviously there's been attempts to reform it with similar sentiments behind that attempt to reform as you're touching on. But spending on welfare is going to increase.
It is.
By £16 billion per year by 2030, more than the previous forecast. Is that a problem if that's not?
It's absolutely a problem. Look, on the one hand, we need a fair society that looks after the poorer members. But we've got 1 million young people out of work. Can anybody believe that those 1 million young people can't get a job or are trying to get a job? I don't believe that. And we have to make them get a job. Now, there's the job seekers allowance that people get for being job seekers, but they're still getting universal credits. So why not increase the job seekers allowance and get rid of the universal credits for those people that are not in work? Now, if somebody's got a medical reason for not working, they've got a real reason, either mental health or physical health, that's fine. We need to support those people and look after them. But if they can work, they need to be forced to go to work. Why should the working population pay for people to sit at home and watch telly? And there's a lot of that going on, and we need to stop it. But the governments over the last 20 years have been guilty on this as well, because there's nowhere near enough apprenticeship schemes. Kids have been forced into university or pushed and persuaded into university, which was wrong for a lot of them, coming out with huge loans, when they should have actually had apprenticeship schemes. But the only way of getting apprenticeship schemes is for the government to sponsor companies to set up world-class apprenticeship schemes and get those young people with skills and abilities by the time they're 21, 22, so they can contribute to society.
The mansion tax is going to see £2,500.
Well, I'm not calling that a mansion tax, Will. That's an increase in council tax, utterly fair. I probably actually would have done more. A mansion tax would be a huge, potentially huge bill. My son's got a house in California, and that's $150,000 a year. That's a mansion tax. This is not a mansion tax. This is just a fair way of raising a little bit more money out of people that can afford to pay. And if you've got a value property over 5 million, 7,500 is not. It's a spot in the ocean to you. So that's not a mansion tax. It's a council tax, and that's very, very good for keeping people in Britain and not driving them offshore. But that's only one tiny component part.
No, but it's interesting to get your take on it as obviously someone that will have to pay for it. A couple more quick questions. Overall, the tax burden is going to be the highest it's been in peacetime since World War II, at 38% of GDP. Stepping back from all the line items and the details, does that have to change direction in the next decade? Does it have to start coming down?
No, absolutely. It absolutely does, and it has to be on GDP growth. It's got to be on GDP growth. It's the only way of reducing the tax burden other than reducing state spending, which it doesn't look to me as though Labour are going to do, because we could take very easily 1% off the public spending bill, which is it would be about 12 billion, because it's about 1.2 trillion. So if we saved 1%, just 1%, that's by going into every department, using AI, making sure people are accountable, making sure people are working hard, really just driving productivity and driving solutions within government departments. 1% is so easy to save.
And just finally, because we're nearly out of time, obviously you previously supported the Conservatives, you switched by a high-profile way before the last election to back Labour. Do you regret switching? Who do you support?
No, I don't regret switching, because it was the right decision at the time. What I regret is that Labour got that last budget wrong. I tried to persuade them on various line items that would raise the money in other ways that would not be damaging to British business. And what they did was a lot of business-unfriendly policies, and I was very unhappy about that. Given where we are now, I think this budget is perfectly reasonable and fair, but we have to grow GDP. We have to attract inward investment. We have to get these young people into work and make Britain way more productive. And that's the only way we can reduce the tax burden and therefore make everybody feel better off.
John, great to catch up. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.